Royal City Summit. This event is called Live Music, Bookings, and Nightlife Then and Now. My name is Dee, and on behalf of Ammo Music, we want to welcome you to this session. We're here at Royal Studios in Guelph, and we got a really exciting panel here with me today. Today, we'll be discussing the journey of three entrepreneurs, venue owners, and former and current booking managers and promoters. And we're going to take a 15-year-long journey through the Guelph live music and nightlife. We chuckle a bit because it's been that long. So the business of live bookings, working with artists and managers, and the EDM, the bubble, the nightlife, and the focus on how the landscape has changed. And I have a very esteemed panel here with me today, so I'm really excited to introduce them to you. First, we'll start with my left here. We have Nick Weaver. Nick has been involved in the Guelph music landscape since his teens, before having lived in the city. By autumn of 2000, when his family had finally moved, Nick became actively involved in the local music scene here in Guelph, particularly with the punk and metal genre. Nick would frequently go to concerts and local shows here in Guelph, and he would coordinate trips for larger groups. His friends, I would assume, were some of them, but also other people as well. In his 20s, when he began working in the downtown bar local, even becoming a member of a few different punk and metal bands as well. With this came an opportunity to start booking bands and shows in more of a management role, and by 2010, Nick inserted himself into larger music projects, one of those being the Gain Music Festival. As of 2020, Nick has retooled and rebranded Gain Media, and he continues to push the music scene here in Guelph. So Nick, welcome to the program. To his left is Belay Badu. Oh no, I messed it up. You gotta correct me here.
Beidou.
Beidou. God. And we practiced so many times, I feel so bad. But anyways, Belay went to Fanshawe for the music industry arts, and then started the Grow Build Arts Collective as a co-creator. I do want to mention that. He doesn't want to take all the credit for it. He toured for 5-6 years with the Age Letters. He has many companies in West Africa, which is an interesting conversation. I can't wait to get into that. A couple of contracting companies there as well. And you might know him as one of the co-owners of Onyx. So thank you very, very much for being here, Belay. And sorry that I messed up your last name. And last but not least, we have the OG. This is Mitch Ross here to the far left, a U of G grad and a prominent figure here in Guelph, especially in the nightlife scene. An uncontended 10-year run, but I feel like it's more, but he just doesn't want to admit that. But he's one of the OGs, like I said, creators of Late Nights, opened Opus, which used to be a banquet hall, which I never knew didn't have an address, had an address, but didn't have a name, but he changed that. And he orchestrated regular weekly events from Thursday to Saturday, and a number of themed events, including the Bunny Hop, 12 Bars of Christmas. And if you're from Guelph, you know those events. They are staples now. He's hosted a number of shows at the Guelph Concert Theater, formerly known as the Raging Cajun. I'm really glad they changed the name of that. And he's booked some of the biggest acts that you know in EDM today, including Steve Aoki, Avicii, Zed's Dead, my man Pauly D, Keys and Crates, and many, many more. So the list is very long, and I'm sure we'll go through them. But gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. I'm sure you're eager to sit down, so take a seat.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So how's everybody doing on this Saturday, this COVID Saturday day?
Not bad.
The weather's not bad.
The sun's shining. It's a beautiful day.
Can't complain.
The sun's shining. It's a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day. You're going for a hike later. You're taking advantage of it.
I am. I'm going to go walk around to Laura. Got my beautiful girlfriend here, so we're going to maybe stroll through the university, go through memory lane. So it should be a nice day.
Well, hopefully you're not too tired after this conversation then.
We'll be okay. I got my coffee to keep me going. So.
Awesome. So now before we kind of get into this, I know, Nick, we talked about the fact that you moved here, so that is your relation to Guelph. Do you know, is there a specific reason why your folks picked to come to Guelph?
We lived close to Guelph, and it was just it just kind of happened that we were always coming here. My mom was going to work here, and my stepdad at the time, so it just made sense. Moved here about midway through high school. So it was a bit of an awkward time to move, but it was definitely for the better. Like as soon as I got to Guelph, I felt like it was home, sort of thing.
And that was in 2010, I believe, right?
2000.
2000.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you look at 2000 Guelph and you look at Guelph now, I mean, what's the biggest things that sort of stick out to you?
I mean, there's been a lot of growth in the city. There's especially like with the region we moved to Woodlawn, like in the north of the city. and it's just a lot of expansion. There was no Walmart there before. There was no, like Costco out in like in the South End and all that. So just a lot of growth, but it's also nice because there's not too much that's changed necessarily. Like it always sort of feels the same, even though things are kind of constantly changing.
Yeah, it's weird because like born and raised in Guelph, and I was telling you earlier, if you told me that there was 2 Walmarts and a Costco in the city, I would have never believed. I thought it was some sort of sorcery, right?
Yeah.
So it's weird because I often say, and I sound like a broken record when I do say it, is it's grown a lot in this time, but it still sort of has that small town feel, and I think that's what makes Guelph unique, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, Belay, what is your relation to Guelph? When did you come to Guelph? Were you born in Guelph?
I was born actually in North Bay, but I came to Guelph in '86 actually. So I've been in Guelph for ever pretty much.
And what brought you to Guelph?
I got here before I was like even 1. My dad, he's a psychiatrist he was a psychiatrist at the Homewood for a bit, and then he was the Minister of Health. And my mom was here. She went to McMaster and then worked as a delivery nurse at the Guelph General Hospital, and then started her own business selling like African goods and wear in Fergus actually. So yeah, we've been in Guelph forever. And yeah, I went to Brock Road School, which is now like the Wellington Learning Center or something like that. So yeah, I've been in Guelph since Gordon and Courtright was the end of Guelph. So I've been here for a while.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, it's treated you well, and I'm assuming that's one of the reasons why you stuck around, right?
Definitely, Guelph it's as Nick was saying, and you were saying, it's big city with a small city feel. Like it just keeps growing. It's a really good community. It's safe, and I mean it's wild too. So you get a vibe of everything. So I've always liked Guelph.
So you both came here early, Guelph. Now, school was the reason that you came here. What schools were you juggling between, and then why did you eventually pick Guelph as your?
So I applied to, Western, Laurier, Waterloo, a couple Toronto schools, but I made my decision on Guelph when I came to the city. You guys said it perfectly. It's a small town vibe, but it's nice and warm, and you can be relaxed, but you can get crazy at times too. I like the campus. The Guelph campus is beautiful. You got Johnston Green there. And on campus, you feel like everybody's kind of open-minded and friendly. You can wear sweatpants to class and not get judged compared to some other schools. So just coming to Guelph, I kind of knew right away that this was the spot, and I'm glad I made the choice.
I'm glad you said the word crazy, because it is one of the few cities where when students are here, you know that students are here. Like the
definitely.
city really transforms between the school year and the summertime, because it is a zombie town during these summers, right? So you know that the businesses and the economy really rely on the students here in the city.
Yeah, I think it's a different city when the students are around compared to when they're not. I mean, there's obviously a difference, but there still is a lot going on, and that's the nice kind of balance is that. You kind of get ready in August for all the students coming back, and kind of like, especially as a business downtown or whatever, you just get ready for that time period, because there's 20,000 new people that are going to come and experience the city. So you always want to kind of put your best foot forward and be ready for it. But there's always still a lot going on in the summer. It just depends on where you're looking, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like as soon as you see Gordon shut down what is the one day when the students move in, that they're here.
Exactly.
D-Day.
So I kind of want to talk about all your how you got into music. Obviously, you guys run a lot of live events, and a lot of your business is derived from music. So obviously, there's a passion there for the medium. Mitch, what got you into music? When did you start seeing that music was going to be a part of your business?
I got into a different type of music at an early age. I started growing up on hip hop. Always loved hip hop. First real memory was I was probably 10 or 11 years old, and my cousin would always visit me from Montreal, and he had always these the dopest headphones ever. And he'd
You don't remember the brand though, eh?
I don't remember the brand. No, it was before Beats time, way before that. But he would sleep over, and I remember he'd always listen to music before bed. And one time he said, "You gotta hear this song." So I put the headphones on, and it was Busta Rhymes. Put your hands where my eyes can see. I think the album, it's crazy beat. And ever since then, whenever I listen to an album or music, I put headphones on, turn the lights off, and I listen to it front to back. So just from that experience, kind of made me appreciate music, especially through a good system or through good headphones. So from there, it kind of rolled into, more hip hop, different types of hip hop. And then electronic music grew on me at a later age, probably when I was 18 or 19. So it was about 7-8 years of hip hop, and then kind of converted into electronic music.
And yourself, Blake?
Like how did I? Music has always kind of been a part of my life. Like I started playing piano when I was 2 or 3. For Christmas, like we always had our Christmas present, which my dad would give us, was to go to Sam the Record Man the next day for Boxing Day, and we'd be able to pick out tapes as a kid and stuff.
Do you remember your earliest record?
I actually, yes, I did.
Great. You were waiting for me to ask.
No, I was really hoping you wouldn't ask that. Embarrassingly, I guess, to be honest, it was Vanilla Ice, actually. Ice Ice Baby.
Nice.
The first tape ever. My brother bought Onyx, I think, the Onyx tape, and then my other brother bought, what did he get for my first time? Oh, New Kids on the Block. He's actually going to hate me for saying that. But yeah, I've been playing piano all my life. I started when I was 2. I did classical music with Suzuki, and then I switched to guitar when I came back from Ghana when I was in grade 8. Then just got into that. In terms of music genres, it's like I know everybody says it, but I generally do like all types of music. Like to me, music it wasn't really like something I could just ignore. It was something that like it's a part of life. Everything to me is like music and art, and so it's like when I went to school and touring and stuff, it's just about like how can I make this my lifestyle? So it wasn't really. I just kind of slipping into it. It's kind of like I needed to do it just as a necessity for my own sanity.
And yourself, Nick?
I took some lessons for piano and everything growing up a little bit. I didn't get terribly far, but it's one of those things that I've always had music around. My mom kind of grew up with like Barbra Streisand and Phantom of the Opera and stuff like that, so that didn't really have an influence. But it was a very kind of different upbringing. Like we were always surrounded by music. Like my dad's side was more Cat Stevens and Simon and Garfunkel and Blue Rodeo and bands like that. So I grew up with that sort of surrounding, I guess. And then really got into punk and metal when I was about 13 or 14, I'd say. And I still remember, going to concerts, and even before moving to Guelph, I would come to Guelph to see J. Kloss shows, like Between the Buried and Me and all those kind of like metal bands and stuff like that. So it was definitely kind of like a folk indie upbringing, and then all of a sudden I just went into like metal and punk. So it was just very different.
I was gonna say a very diverse panel from Barbara to Busta. Yeah. would not have expected that. I guess one more selfish question I want to ask you then, because I was talking about the records. Do you guys remember your first concert experience? I'm going to the depths of the archives here.
Yeah, there's a first concert and there's a first kind of festival that really did it for me. My first festival, or the first real reason why I fell in love with music and production was we were on a school trip for second-year university. So it was a little bit later in my life, but it's one that kind of impacted kind of what we did with the company and how we made the company. We were on a grad trip in Punta Cana, and we organized a trip for about a couple hundred people. And you have your on-resort parties, and with the other universities from Laurier to Guelph to Western. And we just so happened, it was the most randomest thing. There was an event planning company from Spain, and they were hosting a festival called Desalia, which we knew nothing about at all. So they came to our resort to try and promote the festival to get a couple extra hundred people to go to it. Only 20 or 30 of us ended up going because a lot of people didn't want to go off the resort, but it was close by down the beach. So we pretty much turned the corner of the beach, and I kid you not, there were 5,000 people, all dressed in white, full production, lasers, lights, music, sound, and it was all house music. This was probably in 06, 07. So it was on the rise of electronic music, kind of just when it was breaking out. And I just remember coming around that corner, I'm like, holy shit, this is unbelievable. And then at the time, my best friend was there too, and that's kind of when we started thinking, can we do this back home? What can we kind of incorporate to make this part of our daily lives? So that was kind of a big impact from me for a concert festival type of thing.
I like that answer. Was there a specific moment or concert that you guys experienced that you're like, I could see myself in this space? Blake?
No, specific what? I don't think so. I've been going to shows forever, so I've always loved shows, and I know it was something that I wanted to be part of. Like it's you're sharing emotion and the vibe of it and the hype of it, and like as you're saying, the production and everything like that. Like I don't think I have a specific show that like made me why I've always wanted to do it. Kind of.
You're just born to do it.
Yeah, like, I definitely remember my first. I remember my first show was Sharon Lois and Brand. I was like 5 or something, and I went to like Sting. My dad used to take me to concerts all the time, like Sting, BB King. We went to a lot of concerts, like orchestral stuff and like classical shows. But it's like, in terms of like the thing that always got me with shows is like the sound and the lights from anything from a piano sitting in the middle of a wicked hall to a massive production stage with EDM. I love the bass in it, and I love the production, to metal where it's fast and loud and the vibe of everybody moshing. Like I just love shows. So I don't have a specific.
And yourself?
Yeah. I don't know if I can think of anything. I mean, there's one in particular moment where when I was very, very young, my mom took me to this like French singer, and he was, I think I was probably like 5 or 6, and he's like running through the crowd, and his name was Marcel something or other. And I remember my mom always commenting afterwards that I was so fascinated by like the fact that he's like sweating and so into his show. And I'm like just a little kid, so that was like one of my earliest memories of a concert, I guess. I don't know if it got me.
Just remember sweat.
Yeah, I just remember like I was so fascinated by his like he's just like running around through the audience and whatever else, and I was so apparently I was just very fixated on that. My mom would always tell me later, like, you were so interested in like what he was doing and whatever else. So I think that might have kind of got my interest in live music. But I mean, I've been coming to shows and whatever else. Like I grew up in Palmerston, so I'd come to Guelph to come to shows when I was 13 and 14 with friends and stuff like that. So I don't know if there was necessarily a specific moment, but I still always remember that moment of like, this is crazy. There's something going on here, That's at a very young age.
All right, so we keep going back in the archives here. Do you guys recall your first event? And I mean, I assume it didn't go smoothly. If it did, that's amazing because obviously it set you up for further success. But do you remember some of the challenges you faced in maybe your first event? Nick, we'll start with you.
I mean, I think my first big event was the festival that launched Gain Music back in 2011. So I'd been talking about it with a bunch of different people locally in the who are either musicians or DJs or whatever else. And there's always been a great music scene in Guelph, and it was always very obvious that it was there. But I kind of felt like there was a whole kind of niche that wasn't really getting showcased, because there were great big festivals and big events and things like that, but there were no necessarily festivals that had like just a bunch of punk bands on it, sort of thing. So that was kind of where Gain Fest had started, and it just kind of came out of conversations of talking to people. And I remember just kind of thinking, well, I've talked about it with all these people. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I have to follow through with it, because you just have to follow through if you want to do something. So I remember Chase and Dylan had both kind of jumped on board saying, if we don't help Nick, he's just going to crash and burn. And I 100% would have, because my idea was, multiple venues, multiple bands, this big, huge thing that just was not attainable or feasible.
And did you have the self-awareness to know that, like, I can't do this all by myself?
No.
Because then when you start something, you think you want the keys to everything,
Yeah,
right?
that's not really, I mean, Filet's laughing because he's kicked my ass a couple times. I'm always, I mean, the tag, like the Dreamweaver, I remember that was given to me as because I just have these big ideas that aren't really always feasible. Like, I really need to get my ass kicked and just say that's stupid. Like, and I've heard that so many times, and I've had to kind of like eat it a little bit, and it's hard because like when you have an idea and you want to go with something, it's like, no, it's gonna work. And that's just not like you don't function without the rest of the team. And I think that's what, especially with Chase and Dylan and Belay now, what he does is keeps me accountable, but also is just realistic, because the whole spectrum of the original festival was taking over 4 venues, a bunch of bands, and they're like, this is not going to work. Like, you can't do a multi-venue event without coordinating all these things a year in advance and really making sure the businesses are on board. Because the focus was really like we want it to be a high production festival. We wanted to showcase Guelph musicians, but we also wanted to make sense for the businesses that are involved, and we want to showcase them as well. And so it really kind of trimmed down to essentially one day on a Thursday, 13 bands one night, and that was it. And that was the first year's festival. So I threw $2,000 at it, and then we broke even. So it was a complete dead break even, and that was it. And same with year 2 and then year 3. So it kind of just came about from, it would have been a huge crash and burn had it not been for, knowing the right people or whatever else like that. And I really lucked into that, I feel like, as a part of the Guelph community. That's what it does. It just kind of welcomes you in. It's just like, you're an idiot, but we're going to help you. And then that's the biggest thing, is that it would have been a crash and burn had it not been for, the advice and expertise and everything else of other people. It's like the idea is great, but the implementation, that's not my strong suit.
Yeah. Thanks, Blay, for putting him in his place. Yeah. Blay, how about you and your first event? Do you recall those memories? Were they good memories?
Yeah, actually, I started doing shows when I was probably 20 years ago when I was 14 at the Guelph Youth Music Center and some other bars downtown. The stress for during bars was I was underage, so I actually so I was actually using a fake ID sometimes to book shows and stuff like that.
The feds aren't watching this.
Memories of it is it's like when you have that passion, it's just working hard. We used to carry PA systems and amps and stuff on buses just to get there. And then when we got to the next bus stop, it's we'd have trains of people. So one person's sitting with the gear, and then you carry the amp to the next thing, and then the next person goes. And so I mean, my first shows were like that. They were fun. We'd always throw events all through high school. We had a chicken licking event that we did where it's just good music, good friends, and chicken.
That sounds like a good time to me.
Yeah, we used to do those after school with people, and they were good events. They were really fun. It's to me, events have always been about bringing people together, and especially different people, and making people just vibe out together, and my first memory of events is my same memory of events now, is in it's about to be bringing different people from the community, and not just sticking to a clique, but making people comfortable. Well, I think most people just want to talk and want to meet people, but at the same time, because of the pressures of the world, you're shy or you're nervous about what to say. But I feel at events and music and stuff like that, it can bring out everybody and make everybody kind of just vibe on the same. So yeah,
especially when everyone's there for the same reason, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They have the same passion, they like the same artist, music, whatever.
Yeah, even if you might not know that you like the artist, it's especially when we started District, it's you had District. Some of the greatest memories in that place was we'd have island vibes going on upstairs, which is just reggae and hip hop, and we'd have a massive metal show on the second floor. And then you see people coming to coat check, and you'll see the Island Vibes people crip walking to some metal band. It's insane.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's they never knew that they would like that type of music. They just see it one way. But when you get a good vibe and stuff, then you create good stuff, create magic, right?
And Mitch, your first event?
First kind of big event. We actually did a DJ called DJ Danny D.
The Toronto DJ?
Z103.5, the drive at 5.
DJ Danny.
That's the one. I don't know if he's still around or not. But
he's around.
He's still around. I got to hit him up. But yeah, that was we wanted to do something kind of bigger, something different. So we did a themed event. We called it Black Light Blackout, and then brought in Danny D, just because everybody knew the name back then. I mean, there was no XM satellite. It was, if you're listening to music, it's on the radio. So Z103 was big. So we brought him in for a Friday night. It was during Frosh Week, so we kind of catered to, the first and second years. And for some reason, it was a slam dunk. It sold out in a couple days, and that's when we first thought we can kind of roll with this. Of course, first events, though, there's always major issues or some problems that you don't think of. The night before, we had a smaller event, and I remember my friend coming up to me, gives me a big high five. He's like, "I'm so excited for tomorrow." And at that time, I had a BlackBerry shatters everywhere.
Oh.
Problem was, the only cell phone number in there to contact DJ Danny D was his phone number. And I couldn't find his phone number, so I couldn't contact him for tomorrow's show. And he said, call me.
There's no social media, so it's not like you slide his DMs
I
or
can't.
anything
No,
like that.
I can't hit him up on this or that. I don't even think I had his email. Like that was all I had. And at the time, my business partner didn't have his number, so it was all on me. And he said, call me tomorrow at noon, and let's go over the details. And I'm like, this is 2 a.m. the night before. And I'm like, shit, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So one of my other friends, who I wasn't even that close with, saw the whole incident, and he pulls his phone out and says, give me your SIM card. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, take my phone for the night, do what you got to do, and give it back to me tomorrow. I might have met this guy 2 times before. And I'm like, wow, you're a good dude. Shout out Fedja, if you're watching. One of my best friends now, he lives in Bosnia, but one, it kind of showed you, I mean, the type of people that you meet, and they're lifelong friends now. But anyways, he kind of helped out with that situation. We contacted him. And then on the night of, you're not prepared for 1,500 university kids coming through a venue door, especially when the venue's not ready either. So they thought maybe a couple hundred people were coming together. They didn't believe us that we had 1,000+ people coming. So, they're understaffed. You've got herds of people trying to crash the door. So it was a learning curve all around. And I mean, to stay even-minded and not let the stress get to you, we kind of learned that at early in our career, that there's going to be a lot of curveballs, but you've got to kind of adjust and work with the team that you have to kind of make everyone's night fun and successful and safe, because you want them to come back to the next event. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things throughout that night that happened. I mean, the sound system in the venue was really old too. It was the Raging Cajun at the time. So like the music cut out once or twice, and you've got 1,000 people going nuts, and all of a sudden the music cuts out. That's the party.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So you're running down, we as promoters are running down to the basement to try and look at a soundboard that I don't even know what a soundboard does, to try and get it to work. So then we pull one of our friends in, he hooks it back up, music goes back on. But I mean, there's a couple heart attack moments that happen, but I mean, that's what makes you stronger overall, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I want to ask you specifically about the bunny hop and 12 bars, because that seems like it could be a logistical nightmare if not run right? Because the idea is you're hopping from bar to bar. Did your first one go off without a hitch? Or were there any problems? No.
Well, so 12 bars and bunny hop, I have to give credit to XL Lifestyle. They're based in Kitchener-Waterloo. So they came up with the concept and they brought it to Guelph and they partnered with us. So I don't want to take credit on that, because they've done a great job with it. They've expanded to probably 15, 20 cities. So the first one, though, was an absolute nightmare, because you've got to get 10 venues to talk to each other. You've got to get people to rotate at the right time. And if you don't, then people are waiting in line, and no one likes to wait in line if they paid for tickets. So the first couple were a little bit of a logistical nightmare, but adapting to the times, we then created maps and time slots for each group. So we have team leaders, so they knew at 8 o'clock to 8:30, you're at this bar. At 8:30, you got to clear your team out, and they got paid to do that. So we had to hire more people just to make sure it ran smoothly. But coordinating with the venues, because each venue had a specific shot they had to provide, which was like a special shot to check it off on the back of your shirt. So I mean, it's months of work to make one night happen, and especially a night like that is something that happens every year. So if that doesn't go well for a couple people, they could complain to their friends, to their group. That spreads like wildfire. They don't buy tickets the next time. So there's some fires that you have to put out, and as an organizer, you're running between all the venues to make sure everyone's having a good time. But I think, once you get 1 or 2 down, then you know exactly what the problems are. So it's just a matter of putting fires out and having a good team. Having a good team is very important.
On the topic of horror stories, is there a specific one that sticks out to you, and how were you able to overcome those challenges? I love the smile on your face right now. Look,
Buddy hop for sure. Yeah. Buddy hop was great.
Well, I remember working downtown. Like, so I've worked downtown since 2004, I think it was. So seeing the development of all these events is interesting from that perspective. But I think for me, one of the horror stories, I guess, was when we booked. And they're a great band, but White Cowbell, Oklahoma, not realizing that they have like fire and chainsaws. And I knew that it was,
do your Googles, eh?
well, I knew it was part of their act, but we didn't realize that like they were gonna have like a blowtorch inside. And he literally had like a live chainsaw that he had sawing at a piece of toilet, or a toilet roll. So it was just flying out into the audience. But what they were saying is that they'd had shows where people were reaching for the chainsaw thinking it was fake. It's a real chainsaw. So they actually had to have security, like not for our show, but in other shows, they've had to have people kind of stay away. This is a real chainsaw. But it was just kind of one of those moments where I remember coming upstairs, the second floor where the main stage was, and I smelled gas because they were doing something, like they just revved the chainsaw up and didn't give us a warning. So we had no doors open, and I smelled gas, and I remember looking at the stage being like, cool. All right. Like, and you know, like with old buildings,
Call the lawyers.
yeah, like we were just like, like what, like, and they're trained professionals, right? So they know what they're doing or whatever else, but still you've got a gas chainsaw inside, didn't give any heads up. So we didn't get the doors open or anything so it just reeked of gasoline. And I kind of like looked at the stage, looked at Belay, and just like left. I like went up to the third floor. I'm like, I don't even know what to say right now. Like I'm about to have a heart attack because like this is like like liability. All the stuff I'm thinking of. It's like people's jobs. It's like
Everything just happens in slow mo.
Yeah,
that point
and I
too,
kind of
right?
just looked at it, and then people were like kind of like saw my face, and I'm just like, and I just went up to the next because there's multiple of things going on all three floors, right? But that was definitely kind of, and I talked to the guys afterwards, just like, you know, if you'd given us a heads up or whatever else, and with the chainsaw, he carved WCO, like White Cowbell, Oklahoma, into the stage that Belay had just refinished. Like he had just polished it up. He'd just paint, like everything was just redone for it, like to secure it for the festival because we were gonna have a bunch of bands on it, and that too, like that had just happened. So we're like, if we'd had like a block of wood, we could have given them a block of wood to do their chainsaw thing or whatever, right? Like we're pretty accommodating when it comes down to it. Like if we know what's happening and they're like, oh, we just thought you knew what was happening in our show. It's like, we didn't know you're gonna light our stage on fire and do all these other things to it. Like, and he's like, oh, it's only like a surface thing. Like, and that WCO stayed in the stage forever. Like it's just,
Right.
it's just there. Like, that
So
was-
now, before you have an act come in, you make sure you run through their entire.
yeah, and you know, just like kind of like we're okay for most things happening, but if we're ready for it, it just helps, you know, because and what they said is literally like most venues won't let us do this, so we just don't say what we're gonna do. It's like, so you just ask for forgiveness. Like I get that because I'm guilty of that. Like ask forgiveness, not permission, you know, whatever. But when you're using a chainsaw and like carving into a stage, like that's somebody's work. That's, you know, like that's a lot of, like Belay spent hours on that stage, like building it for one, you know, and whatever else. So it's just, yeah, that was definitely like a, oh shit moment.
So that was between both of you. Can you top that one?
Actually, yeah. Like that one was actually, yeah, that was terrifying. Like that was a chaos moment. I gotta give props to Mitch. So I've been doing bunny hop and stuff with them for like a bit, but yeah, seeing that event morph. You know, it gets more organized every year. It gets better every year, and it's like, yeah, that event is. It's such an awesome event. It's like, it's almost like Christmas every time, you know? It's like,
But
it's really,
that's when you know Christmas is here, when 12 bars comes around.
yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, do I have to deal with chaos? 100%. But it's like, it's from the organization and seeing it get better and better every year. Like, it's a great event. An event that went wrong, I don't even know. I think the only time I've ever actually just like left was, it was a double floor event. I'm pretty sure it was Island Vibes. And, our co-check person, who I'll keep nameless, mixed up all the co-check tickets. So we had like 400
wow.
people all screaming. Nobody knew what was going on, and I literally just got up and left.
Yeah, she was crying. She was crying by the end of that. I had to be in coat check, like finding coats and telling people to wait.
Yeah, I was like,
And if
nah.
you've ever been a last call, sorry, those are the most impatient people ever.
Oh
right?
yeah, I was screaming. Girls are crying. It is terrible. And yeah, for me, it's like, yeah. Sometimes I just don't have patience, so I remove myself and let the staff handle it. They did a great job. Like.
All right, so I want to start like going through the timeline of this Guelph nightlife, right? We said 15 years, whatnot. So conversation obviously begins with you, Mitch. So you get to university, and at what point in university do you say, you know, I want to become a part of events and what's going on in the downtown scene? I don't know if someone recruited you or you would approach somebody, but how did that all start?
So first year university was probably when the ball started rolling. I lived with my co-founder of Late Nights, Matt Durnan, and in first year, you know, when you get to a university town, you're amazed by, I guess, the bars and nightlife and be able to go out on a Monday night or Tuesday night. So we did that for first year. We went to Palace, Trappers, Van Goghs. At the time, actually, respect Shez. He was doing on Van Gogh's second floor. He had a crazy hip hop party. And I think he still has an email. I emailed him because I had an underage, I had a fake ID. And I emailed him. I said, is it okay if I come with this fake ID? And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. He still has a screenshot. He sent it to me like 5-10 years ago.
Just throw Shaz under the bus.
Right under
He
the
said no
bus.
problem. Anyways, because of that though, I'm like, whoa, this is some cool stuff. So in first year though, we just throw parties in our dorm. And I mean, our sound system wasn't that good, so we were just known for, he'd play a song on his computer, I played on my computer at the same time, so we'd have surround sound in our room, and then we'd have everybody come in and party. So after first year, that
Surround sound. Like in the literal sense.
exactly. So there's 1, 2, 3, go, and when every Saturday night 9 o'clock, that's coming on, and everyone's coming in for a party. So we did that for first year, and then we were downtown as well. The aha moment though was when we were in Trappers. We were standing next to the pizza bar, and I still remember this vividly. The DJ played Spice Girls. The DJ played Backstreet Boys. And
Hey, let's not knock those.
I know you like them. I know you like them. But when
We're
you
a diverse panel here.
but when you hear them every single night for all first year, you get sick of it. So I remember Matt turned to me and he said, "We can't do this for the next 4 years." And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, this is this is good for 1 year, but let's see what else we can do." So that next day, we went out, walked around downtown, and we saw a small little sign that said Apartment 58. And that night, then we went out and we said, "Let's go check the place out." So we walk into this place, and it was a Thursday night, probably about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, not a soul in there. They've got beautiful booths, lounges, DJ booth, sound system. Nobody was there. You look around downtown, you've got a line around the corner at Trappers Palace. At the time, the on-campus bar called Brass Taps was the hot spot on Thursdays. It was a 3-hour wait to get in. And I remember we said, again, we're standing in line saying, we're not doing this for 3 years. We're not waiting in line. If we wanted to go to Trappers on a Saturday or for dollar beers on a Monday, we'd have to line up at 7:30, 8 o'clock, which is absurd. So we're like, we got to do something. So it kind of fell into our lap, actually, that I was in my class, and an older student, he was in fourth year, he was sitting behind me, and I was playing NHL 93 on my computer, on my laptop. I was paying attention in class, obviously.
I was gonna say, what was the class?
I don't even remember. Anyways, he taps me on the shoulder. He's like, "Yo, game's sick, man." We just got started to talk, and he had the same idea. He's like, "I've been here for 4 years, man, and I've been going to Trappers for 4 years, and I'm over it, dude." So we said, well, why don't we do something new? So we brought him. I mean, he brought us the idea as well, and said we can kind of collab. You bring you bring the older people, and we'll bring the younger people, and we've got this place called Apartment 58. So we approached the owner, and came up with the idea and said, look, it's Thursday night. Can we bring people here? And he said, sure. Like, what do you guys want to do? And we said, we want to do bottle service. And he goes, I kid you not.
So where did the idea of bottle service come to? Like, why that specific?
So in Toronto, that's what was becoming big. So all the clubs were kind of converting to more of a lounge feel, more of a VIP feel. And Guelph didn't really have a VIP bottle service thing. It was, you can wear sweatpants to Trappers and get your dollar beers or Palace and do that. So he said, we want to bring a slice of Toronto to Guelph. But I kid you not, the owner said, what is bottle service? And we looked at each other like, okay. And then we said, well, let's do $100 bottles of Grey Goose. And he's like, okay. So we started doing that, and we had people from Toronto drive to Guelph, because a bottle in Toronto is like $250. So they'd come and pre-order 10 bottles of Grey Goose at once. And we kind of just rolled with that, saying, we've got a niche market here. Let's build on this. But a leg up we had at the time, the other bar owners, they're older, they weren't at school. And at that time, Facebook just came out. And to be on Facebook, you had to have a university email. So we were able to contact the students directly with our events. So we almost had a monopoly on the marketing platform, because the other bar owners couldn't get onto Facebook. So automatically there, we had a leg up on the competition. We had a niche market that we were going after. And that kind of snowballed into a weekly thing. Then we kind of did two events a week, and ran with that for a year or two, and kind of just grew that into concerts and booking DJs and things like that. So the first main event was Thursdays at Apartment 58, which we did kind of themed events just to keep things fresh. We did things just as simple as a sunglass party. everyone would wear sunglasses, or we did a mask party where you'd wear a masquerade ball type of thing. So these were just, just concepts we come up with when we're sitting in our condo, being like, what else can we do on Thursday nights? And it was a good success, and we kind of rolled with it.
How did you avoid becoming comfortable? Because you could have just been running these nights and not have these themes and whatnot. Like, what made you want to incorporate themes, extend it past, Thursday nights? What made you want to push the envelope? And I can only imagine that, it started with two of you, but then you had to build a team. At what point did you have to build a team?
So probably by the second year, we realized that we wanted to grow more. We wanted to expand our reach. And we're also getting older too. So, we wanted to keep the clientele fresh and new. So you always want to kind of bring in, new faces or new bodies. We would do bigger events as well to kind of hire a team of people that could, work with us on the regular. So if they performed well on a big event and sold 100 tickets, we know their network is great. Let's bring them on for kind of a weekly thing. But it was... it was interesting because you have to hire the right personalities. Some people's, your head gets also really big in this type of environment because,
As Nick mentioned earlier.
Because you're the guy that's hosting. You're meeting all these people, so you want to make sure you select the right team and they're trustworthy to you and honest to you. Because once you kind of open the door for them, they can kind of do other things as well too. So having good relationships with the bar owners is very important. Because once you build a night up for an owner, he can say, I've got my night now, I don't need you anymore. And there's a saying, they say you're only as good as your last event. But I've realized you're only as good as the team that you have with you, because those are the people that are on the front line. They're spreading the word, they're bringing the guests in, and they're making sure everyone has a good time. You can't entertain 300 people at once or 500 people at once. You've got to have great individuals with you, and they've got to grow with you and want to grow with you and push you too. They come to you with ideas. The best thing we always said, we have an open format platform, and if you want to bring an idea to the table, that's a better opportunity for you to make more money, stuff that we're not seeing, and stuff that we can grow and expand. So that was really important to us to work with good people.
On the topic of building teams, I'll come to you too about this. You're obviously looking for ambitious people, but what are certain qualities and attributes that are you looking for? Because a lot of people think they can just do this, but that's a problem. I think the people that think that they can just do it, they don't realize how difficult it is. So what are some of the intangibles that you're looking for when you're building a team?
It's kind of tough to answer because it kind of changes, but I think for the most part, like you can just kind of tell with people if they really are passionate about it and have good intentions with it, because people can kind of like ride the coattails forever and then just want all the credit for it and not do the work. But there's certain people, like it's not easy finding people to help out or to have a similar mindset. We've had multiple people on, like we've had like Liam and Nick and these kids who started as kind of interns, and they were basically kids, but have come so far and learned a lot, and also kind of found their own ways, from either getting like yelled at from us or whatever else. But I think for the most part, it's also being able to kind of take a bit of whatever sometimes, because you got to take your licks and
have a bit of a thick skin.
Yeah, and because like the throwing shows and events it can be a stressful thing, and in that moment, normally on show days, like I don't eat a whole lot or whatever else, and sometimes the smallest little thing, especially when we were first starting, can just set you off for no reason. So you have to kind of be mindful of that, but be aware that like we're not just like yelling at people unintentionally or anything like that, but it takes a bit to learn. Like you can't just walk into it and have all the connections. Like, and I think some people kind of walk in thinking, oh, well, this person, so I automatically know that person. And that's not really how the relationship goes. Like you're building relationships, you're building your own network, but you're all doing it together. So it's tough though, because you have people who you have a lot of faith in and you want to work out as far as like an intern or whatever else, and it doesn't always work out, but when it does, it's great, because the guys who I mentioned, like Liam's booking tours now, and he's touring in bands, and he's got a whole lot of experience. So it just took him a little while to kind of find his way, I guess. So I don't know if there's any specific qualifications, but you can normally kind of see it in people that they're really passionate about it, or they care about the same things.
I know on a personal experience, I find, it's hard to find people that are able to have actual conversations. And that's a huge part, right? I think a lot of kids now are missing the ability to be able to sell themselves. So I'm sure that's a huge part of it too. Because I think a lot of kids think, oh, I have like 5 to 6,000 followers on IG. Like my network is huge. But like you said, you don't necessarily know all those people, right? It's just, it's just a clout thing, right? You did something funny and now people are following you. So it's not necessarily you have those interpersonal skills, right? Mm-hmm. Anything you'd like to add there, Billy?
Well, it's pretty much what Rose saying, especially with, Mitch was saying over there, definitely about staying humble and, knowing your team and trusting your team, because it's like, it is, you say, it's the younger kids that really keep you going. They're coming with the fresh ideas and they're coming with that. And also when you're building a team, especially from going from, doing events to being a venue owner, it's like you'll see teams defragment so fast. The next kid coming up, he's like, I can do better than this and all that. So what I look for in teams is good honesty is a huge thing. Good, honest people and hard work, because as you said, people think that it's really easy to throw events all the time, and it's not. We do sometimes we do 5 events a week, 7 events a week, and you have to be smart enough to manage your energy, manage your food, manage your emotions, stuff like that, and stay humble and take your licks when somebody's yelling at you, and also learn from other people. That's how you get better, and especially with events, it's you have to be open to knowing when you're wrong and taking ideas from other people, and then collaborating your ideas and making a wicked event for the 300 people or 1,000 people or something. It's definitely not a one-man show, and the best teams are built off people who know that. Yeah.
Mitch, you spoke about Facebook and how it kind of just fell into your lap and made things easier for you. But I'm assuming you didn't just rely on them. Were there other forms of marketing that you had to start dabbling in order to get the word out?
Yeah, I mean, Facebook was kind of the beginning part of it. But once we realized our competition was on Facebook too, we had to do things that were a little bit different. We kept it the old school way and printed off postcard flyers. And we would literally...
Had a couple of those on my windshield.
There you go. I'm sure you did. I'm sure the entire city did. And we had flyering teams, and they'd go on campus, go door to door. This is when you didn't need a passcode or anything to get into the residences. So we pull in every single door. We would do classrooms. We'd get up at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., go into the classrooms before Rosansky Hall, flyer for that week or that month, whatever a big event was.
Did you ever get in trouble with that at some point?
Oh yeah, I got so many letters from the university.
I don't want people listening and saying, that's an easy method.
No, don't. I recommend don't doing that, because really you might have some legal issues too that we kind of tiptoed around. I don't know how we got out of that. When we did stuff we set up at the Cannon, we brought a speaker, and we would play the DJ's music to educate the people as well too. We did T-shirts, we did hats. We did, different online campaigns as well too. But I find word of mouth is probably the best form of marketing. Someone talks about an event, they have a good time at an event, that makes it a lot easier to make that sell for the next event. Word of mouth is kind of the main one that we like the most, and that again comes from good teamwork.
So you've all seen the heavy emphasis on social media, right? Obviously, a lot of people are using that. It's a free space for you to market your events. I don't know if you're like me. I remember when my girlfriend went to the U of G at the time, or ex-girlfriend, I should say that now. My new girlfriend probably wouldn't be happy if I said that. My current. But anyways, she got a Facebook account, and I was so stubborn in my ways that I was like, I don't want to fall for this trendy thing. It's just a trend, right? I don't want to get into it, right? And now you see, the TikToks, the Instagrams, the LinkedIns, all that sort of stuff. How did you become comfortable with the idea, this is the new wave and this is how I got to market my product?
Yeah, I remember still being on MySpace and having ICQ and whatever else. So I was sort of in that generation when it was a transition. And I remember having a Facebook account, but not really wanting to use it. But it obviously is a very important tool, and you have to be aware of that. You can't. As much as you want to, I don't want to use this. And, TikTok, I think for me right now is I had it for a while. I don't really understand it necessarily, right? So it's something that you have to have those people who get it and can do those things and can connect with it, because you don't have to be into every single, because even my Instagram, I don't post a whole lot on my own personal one, but I try to keep up with other things, and you can get lost in a myriad of social media things and all the new ones coming up. So I think it's important to kind of be aware of them, but know what works for you as well, because not everyone looks at Facebook anymore. Not everyone looks at certain social media. So I think with your demographic and what you're going for, you kind of have to know what people are into. But like Mitch was saying, like so much of it is really about the experience and getting to know people and that word of mouth element, because as great as some social media can be, it really can get to be a mess as well, right? So you have to be, kind of concise and know what your message is and all that. But I think the transition of figuring out social media, like we were really lucky in that we're in that generation where we saw the development of Facebook and we saw the development of a lot of these different, Twitter and all that sort of stuff. So it's good to be aware of it. But for me personally, I really, I'm not on it as much as I probably should be.
Well, that's self-awareness we were talking about earlier, right? And you just got to get better at it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yourself, Belay?
Yeah, I gotta agree with both of them, I guess. Again, like definitely word of mouth. Like, I'm a big fan of like guerrilla tactics and old school stuff where it's like handing out flyers. Like I've put same thing speakers. Like we couldn't get our third floor going for a bit, and I just put a speaker in the window. And I remember Dario, who owns Frank's, came over and he's just like, "Did you put a speaker in your window?" And I was like, "Well, I don't have the budget you have, man." And I was like, "My DJ's better." And I was like, "Can you keep your line too long?" And like, Royal had just opened too, and you'd see the lines just standing there. And then I just started seeing people like, people just get from the lines and draw and draw and draw. And it's like, yeah, word of mouth and social media it's definitely important. It's like it's a necessity that needs to be there. But I think the thing that ties us all together is, we all have like it's almost like niche markets. Like, we do big things, but it's like, it's definitely like, I always say to people who like love trappers, I'm like, if you love trappers and you truly love trappers, I'm like, you're probably not gonna like my bar, and that's okay. It's like, I don't need a lineup down the street. It's like, I always think all I need is 250 people, and like, that's it, right? Or like, that's just for the venue now. So yeah, word of mouth and just, I guess social media, but to me, I like social media and, being real on social media. It's, there's a lot of clout, there's a lot of false stuff, but it's, I don't know, just got to navigate it the way that you have to navigate it to make yourself personally feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when it comes to music and events, right? It's an always evolving and changing, medium, right? And the type of music people listen to is always changing, and what they're liking. And where I'm going where I'm going with this is EDM, right? And Mitch, you were a huge part of that. How were you able to get ahead of the curve and notice that people are starting to listen to this, and I need to start bringing live acts in here?
We caught it on the wave up. So we spent a lot of time researching new music. We had a good team of young individuals that could pick out an artist if they had a good song. And it might be just one song, but we would kind of roll with that. And it's almost a gamble because we'd like to book the artist early in their career because one, they're a lot cheaper. And then we'd book them ahead. So we'd book them 6 months or 3 months from the date that we found the song. We would hopes that they released 2 or 3 other songs, or they'd get more radio time, or that song would blow up, which would then lock in our low price for the DJ, and then have also 3 or 4 or 5 months to promote the show. So I think the main thing was, looking at blogs, YouTube, just talking to other people in the scene of who's up and coming, and you've got to stay in tune with that because the second your competition hears a DJ or artist, they're making an offer for that artist in the city or the Tri-City area, and once they book that show, they have first right of refusal to the next show. So if you miss out on someone like an Avicii or a Steve Aoki and your competition gets that, you're then now kind of backpedaling trying to find that next Aoki or Avicii or Nightlife, wherever it may be. So a lot of research. We'd come home from school, and from 6 p.m. till midnight, we would just listen to music, send each other songs. We'd have a friends group of, this music's hot, we like this, we don't like this, and 2, 3, or 4 of us agreed on a song. We'd say let's reach out to the DJ and try and book them. And some of these DJs didn't even have representation. We booked some guys through their best friend. That's who their agent was at the time, which was interesting because we book it through the best friend, and then 3 months later he gets signed to an agency, and the agency would said, no, the show's not happening. So we'd have to handle that and say, well, we've got a contract with the guys. So,
is there a particular artist that you missed out on because of that situation? That you look back and you're like, damn it, I wish.
I don't know about missed out on. I think we might have got outbid on. We were competing at the peak of the time, we had some big players like Live Nation or Inc., and their pockets were a little deeper than ours, so they could offer quite a bit more money. But I mean, throwing a concert, your bottom line is so slim that a couple $1,000s, that's what you're making off a show. So you could pay the extra dollars, and it's great for your name and great for your brand, but you're taking a hit on your wallet. So some shows we did that, and some shows we had to do that because we wanted to stay relevant and we wanted the name behind our brand. But the most successful shows are the ones that you catch on the up and coming, and book them in advance. And for me, those were, more rewarding too, because those artists actually appreciate you more too, because they realize the first time coming to Canada is because we're doing a show in Guelph, Ontario, which is wild. You're flying someone in from Germany or Sweden, and they've never stepped foot on Canada. So his first tour of Canada was driving from Toronto on the 401 to Guelph, and then back to Toronto. It's like he only had one night. So it's cool to see that though, because then they hit you up 5-10 years later and they say, thanks for that, because you exposed us now to the Toronto market, the Ontario market, and things like that. So.
Is there a particular artist, because you've listed some of the heavy hitters, right? Aoki, Avicii, those guys. Is there a particular artist that you booked, you would typically book them 3-4 months in advance?
Yeah, probably. Our favorite one was Porter Robinson. Mm-hmm. He had a track called Say My Name. And it just came out, and it was, SoundCloud or MySpace, whatever it was getting a lot of repetitions, and we're like, we got to get this guy, we got to book him. And that was the example where his friend was his agent. So we emailed him. Took a while to get back to us. Kept emailing. We had no phone numbers. Couldn't contact. Finally gets back to us and says, "Yeah, you want to book Porter Robinson? Sure. Send us the details." So he said, "Send us an offer." So we offered him $500, a flight, which at the time he lived in North Carolina, and we gave him whatever rider he wanted, whatever meal he wanted, whatever hotel he wanted, and they accepted it. So it was all done, contract signed, and this was probably 3-4 months in advance. And we did it at Taboo, which was, a 200-person venue, mm-hmm. small venue. At the time, it was a heavy metal rock venue, and we begged and pleaded with the owner to allow us to do a Thursday electronic night. So it was really kind of weird because we're doing electronic nights on a Thursday, but then Friday you've got heavy metal coming in. So people weren't sure what type of venue it was. Is this for DJs or electronic music? So some people were scared to enter the venue because the heavy metal is a different industry than the electronic industry, and the people that go to a heavy metal show, they're a little different than
the gangbang a bit.
Yeah, they got the mohawks, they got the long hair. So people were scared to step foot into the venue. So we had to break that wall down, and the only way to kind of do that was to bring in talent. So we booked Porter Robinson there. Anyways, he came across. We picked him up from the airport. And the most chill, relaxed guy. We had the place. We were sold out. We did $5 tickets, which is unbelievable. Now he's like $100 to see the guy. Yeah. And we said, let's go for a nice steak dinner. Get whatever you want. He's like, bro, I want to go to Taco Bell. I'm like, what? He's like, no, straight up. Let's go to Taco Bell. We eat it in my hotel room. And that was his rider. And at the time, though, he was 17 or 16 years old, so he couldn't drink. All he wanted a Starbucks Frappuccino on his rider. So he had 5 of those in an ice bucket.
But sound like you're the king of fake IDs. You didn't pop them one.
But this is the crazy thing, though. So we bring him to the front door of Taboo, and the bouncer goes, "Let me see his ID." And I'm like, I didn't think about this. And the bouncer would not let him in. And I'm like, you're kidding me, man. We flew this guy in. We've got a lineup around the corner. We want to pop him in quickly so people don't see him. And the guy's like, no. So we had to call the owner down, wait for the owner to come. I'm like, buddy, get this guy in the door right now or the show's not happening. Anyways, he got in there. It was a great show. And he put in his interviews that was one of his craziest shows because it was so intimate. It's a room this space, so he had, the crowd's literally touching him, sweat's flying off his eyebrows, off his hair. So that was really rewarding because, I mean, up and coming, and then you see the guy now to what he is. It's, I mean, the people that were in that venue, those 200 people that got to see him, I mean, they still message us and say, holy $5, we got to see this guy. And we're doing $2 Jaeger bombs at the time too. So mix that together with Porter Robinson, and that's the environment you had. It was
That's amazing. So you both have had a lot of experience in booking, talent. What are some of the? I mean, there's a lot of people that are going to watch this that want to run events and want to book talent as well, and hopefully get to the resume that Mitch has built up himself. Mm-hmm. What are some of the? What's the advice that you would give to people when booking talent? What are like things that you can avoid in advance? And is it a lot of paperwork? Is it a lot of obviously a lot of conversation? What are those? What does that typically look like?
Yeah, for me, I mean, the first larger show that I booked was Cancer Bats, and essentially at that time, because I was an unknown, the agent had been dealing with J Cloth for years because he was throwing all the bigger, punk metal heavy shows and a bunch of other shows too. He's kind of a name that's synonymous around the town, but when agents or bookers don't know you, it just kind of takes that leap of faith. So at the time, Paul Gorley was the manager for Cancer Bats, and he just said 2,000 straight up. And that just send me the cash to make sure that that you're in it. And I think that's one of the biggest things. Is like if you want to book an act, like you're gonna have to fork over the money. And for them, because we didn't have a relationship with them, we didn't know them, they had to know that we were into it as well. So you got to pay up front sometimes. And that was kind of like my intro into booking larger acts. And you got to build that, and then after that, we didn't have to do a big deposit like that because the agent knew that you knew what you were doing, put on the show, that their artist got paid, all that sort of stuff. But on top of that, I mean, you just have to be aware of the extra expenses, like because you're sending $2,000 in a wire transfer. Well, there's also a fee on that, and there's also X number of, like, you also got to spend money on the rider or whatever else. So it's really just kind of being prepared for the fact that you're going to be spending money on it. And just be aware that with the rider, there's other things, who knows what it could be. Like with Taco Bell, that's pretty awesome.
That was the best.
And for the most part, like most artists aren't.
Going too.
Yeah, like most artists aren't that, like they won't even know sometimes what's on their rider. I've had that where they're just like, what? That's on my rider. I didn't know that, but that's cool,
Like
so,
blue Skittles?
Yeah, it's like I because most of the time the management's writing it, or it's kind of just like a necessity for them to kind of have. So for me though, it's kind of just getting in and being aware that there is this dollar amount to them. And I've always had I always find it hard because I know the artists are worth a certain amount, and that's kind of the payoff. Is like sometimes you just kind of say, I want to book that artist, I don't care who it is. Like we'd booked USS, same sort of thing, where it was just like, I want to have that band. It doesn't matter what the cost is, sort of thing. So I think it's kind of just being aware of that and just making sure that you have the resources to be able to pay for the show, or else you're going to eat it.
Right. Speaking of resources, Blake, I specifically want to ask you about this because I know you know equipment really well. When these acts come in, like, what are certain questions that you start off with, and how do you get that conversation rolling?
The way I kind of do stuff is, like, I look at their equipment list like a little bit, but since I do know gear and I've been in the industry for so long, it's like my places are set up so that there's no worry about it. It's like, if anything, what I'm doing most of the time is overkill. And so when you want more to it, it's like it's impossible. Like some places are like, they want to bring in their own lighting system, and I'm like, yeah, okay, cool, but like we have crazy lights anyway, and they'll bring in their thing that they tour with, and then they realize that, like, yeah, we've put $20,000 into lights, and you're coming here with $1,000 lights. It's like, I understand, because it's like, to be from the other side of it, like I'm lucky that I haven't, like, I used to do a lot of booking. I did booking for like 5-6 years, and I got out of it. Actually, when I met Nick. It's about the whole like hospitality thing, and like definitely making sure, like, the artist is comfortable and your talents are comfortable, and that way it's like when they do come back, or as Mitch was saying, when they have these crazy events in a place like Guelph, like, that's why I love Guelph. It's like you have these crazy events in Guelph. We've had Obi Trice. We've had, like, it was like, why is Obi Trice in Guelph? Yeah. but he loved it. And every time he comes back, he's like, this is my favorite place to be because, like, we treat him right. And it makes everything easier in terms of booking. So, yeah, to me, it's, in terms of, like, equipment and stuff, it's like, have the right equipment. Like, don't don't slack on it, because if you slack on it and you cut corners, like, oh, instead of buying this board, I can get this one or this speaker. So this speaker, it's like, don't slack on it, because if you slack on it, it shows your commitment, your level of commitment to that artist. Like, they'll instantly see it. If they don't have a good time, they're not coming back.
All the artists talk too. So I mean, having a guy like Billy on your team would be. I mean, you can't put a price tag on that, because if one artist comes to the city and the venue and the music or the speakers are not good, they'll tell their agent, and that agent's roster knows all the other DJs too, so they'll tell them too. We weren't fortunate enough to have a guy, or have a venue like Billy's that already has all the gear there. We have to bring all of our own stuff in. And some venue owners don't understand that. They operate it as I want people in here to buy drinks. I don't care about the environment really. And the old school guys, it's very hard to get that across. So
definitely,
we had to hire a guy on our team, Matt Glover, and he did all of our lighting, all of our production. And he'd go to Long McQuaid, we'd have to rent the gear. We'd have to budget for that in our shows. We'd have to bring in lasers. We finally got the venue to buy some stuff, but I mean, some of their riders are so ridiculous that you've got to get this stuff in. So we had to hire someone pretty much full time to do that. And without his vision, our shows wouldn't have been what they were, because you're making an environment for the people that are coming to it. They're not just here for the music. They're here to see, lights, smoke machines, fogs, lasers. So having that down pat is important.
To go off that is like, it came from, especially when I was like, before when I was touring and stuff, we could play these awesome shows in like Toronto or something with the band, and then you come to another city and then they have nothing there. And it's about like, as you said, when a speaker blows or something, like, fix it. It's like, you're the venue, fix it. And that old school mentality, to me, especially when I started the first bar district, it's like, it just doesn't make sense. It's like, if you have an artist coming, you want the artist to have the best experience ever on stage, because when your artist is hype and having a good time, your audience is automatically hype and having a good time, and therefore you sell more drinks. It's like, I've never understood, the old school venue mentality where it's like, well, I just want to sell drinks. It's like, if people aren't having a good time, it's like, I want everything to be in unison. That way, it's like the artist is vibing off the crowd, which is vibing off each other, which makes the bartenders vibe better, which it makes everything smoother. It's like, it can't be a fragmented system.
If your sound cuts out, though, you have no show. You have no people. So like, we've had the sound cut out and the DJ would walk off the stage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so you've just lost then. You're going to lose an hour of people drinking. So, make sure your stuff is working. So those are the most stressful nights, is when you got production issues, or if you got a prima donna DJ that doesn't, if the system's not exactly perfect, he will refuse to play.
That's crazy.
I've had to like run to Red Tree in the middle of, just before a show started to get extra speakers, just because the sound system wasn't cutting it. So literally day of the show, I'm running across town to get speakers because the venue just doesn't have proper speakers. And they were like, no, we have them, we're good, we'll be able to take them from across the road and move them over, it's fine. Walk in and no. So
Well, it seems like one thing you guys are preaching is like, if you don't know something, find somebody that does, right? Like,
Definitely.
you have the
Totally,
luxury of you're well versed in all the equipment, but if you only know a quarter of the stuff that you need to, you don't bubblegum it, don't half-ass it, right?
Yeah, no, it's like, you got to learn. If you want to learn everything, it's like, you have to learn. Like, in terms of like during events, like Mitch has taught me a ton. Like, and like Nick too. It's like, even little things like wristbands. Like, who would have thought? I'm not thinking about stuff like that, but it's like, you're only as good as your team. You're only one person, so the team you build around you is what really makes you, excel forward and push forward. Like, definitely.
So we've talked about some of the horror stories that have happened at events. Is there a particular event that that individually you're really, really proud of, and what made it go off so successfully?
I think any show by the end of it is something to be proud of for me. It's just the ability to kind of bring people together and seeing that. It's a really amazing thing. Like, once show day comes, my job is kind of done, so I can kind of not stress as much as long as things are going well. But just I can kind of sit back and I know that like the team's handling it and seeing seeing people coming together and whatever else. But I think one of the nicer ones was when we had Craig Cardiff at at District not too long ago, and it was this. It's funny because District, the second floor was this. It was a nightclub. It was a big space. We've had crazy parties there, island vibes, and like all these, crazy parties. But then to see the room transformed with like the moon back there and couches and very intimate. And it was funny because he was on a Sunday, and Saturday we'd had some metal show or something the day before. So it was this crazy metal show the one day, and then Craig Cardiff with just him on a stage with his guitar, and he just
changes.
But he just completely filled the room still, and it was just this amazing moment of just kind of sitting back and being like, it's crazy that we can do so many different things and have so many different people coming to appreciate the music and the shows. So
great week. We had Spice Girls that week.
Yeah, we had Spice
we?
Girls too. We had a Spice Girls tribute.
Spice Girls cover band.
I was there.
Yeah, Spice Girls tribute,
It was
yeah.
so good.
So it's funny when you can have that sort of appeal, and you can feel it. You can walk in the room and just like, this is really cool. And there's multiple events. Like our festival is always really like special one for us because it's largely Guelph based bands and bands we've worked with and things like that and people we know. But when you can have a moment like that, that's a really special thing for a show.
Blay, a particular show you're proud of?
I don't know. I'm proud of every show, but I think my most shocking one.
Guys are saying the politically correct
Yeah,
answers here. Come on,
no,
give me the juice.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's like I don't know. Like from all the great DJs to the artists, but like the funniest one I think was probably Phineas. I think their name is.
Oh yeah.
From California. Where are they from?
Yeah, they're from LA.
Yeah, LA. And Nick's like, yeah, this band, we gotta have them up. And I was like, looking at them, and I was like, Christian metal? I was like, what?
Christian metal band.
I was like, no, I don't want to do this. So I think we stuck it on like a Sunday or something, like, which is actually hilarious.
The irony, yes.
And yeah,
They
it's
went to
like, I came around the corner, like, the venue was sold out, like, packed. He had this band on stage, and he was like, oh, let's give it up for Jesus. It's just like, it was the heaviest circle pits, people are moshing. It was like, yeah, that show, I was laughing the entire time. I was like, this is insane. Like, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Every event, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I love events. Like, I honestly love events. Like, it's so funny.
So you've had a lot of big names going on to have, these illustrious careers. Are you particularly proud of one maybe because you were to get them first, or the show just was really, really good?
Nightlife was probably one of the best shows that we did, just because everything from front to back worked perfectly. There are no sound issues. They came and their energy was ecstatic. They brought blow up bananas, blow up champagne bottles. They had actual bananas on stage.
Did you know that they were going to bring all this stuff in?
Yeah,
or was
so
it just a nice surprise?
No, they let us know before.
Okay.
And they had a great team that traveled with them, so they set everything up. And just when their intro came and they dropped their first song, and you just look around Guelph Concert Theater, and you've got 1,500 people with their hands in the air, just reliving that, and we rewatched that video over and over again. The team that helped put that on, all the late nights guys, it was just, it was so rewarding to see that. But the ones that are the most rewarding are the artists that you discover before anybody else, and you bring them to Canada for the first time. Like a Nicky Romero. John Alon was actually our first international artist that we brought in. He was one after Danny D. So we did Danny D, and we're so confident. We're like, let's bring in someone else. So, like I said, John Alon had a song called Killer, and we paired it with the Halloween. So we did a Halloween tour. We did 2 shows in Guelph and then 1 in Toronto. What we did not know though is that if you want to bring an international DJ in, he needs a work permit.
Oh, interesting.
So we remember getting the phone call from his agent saying, John's going to land in about an hour. Can you send him the work permit? And my partner, Matt Durnan, we both didn't know what to do. We're like, we've got 3 shows here that are all sold out. 1 show's in Toronto, so we're kind of giving it to another club that is not really ours. So they're looking at us to be the people that are bringing the guy in. And he's about to land in an hour. So I don't know what Matt did to this day. He did some sort of wizardry, and he emailed off a work
Probably
permit.
not allowed to talk about it.
I don't know what he emailed it off to the border services. And I still remember me and him were sitting there, and we're waiting for people to come off the plane at Terminal 3 or wherever arrivals is. and we're just like, dude, he's not coming. He's not making it through. I'm like, we were just heartbroken. And all of a sudden, I don't know if you guys know what John Allen looks like. He's kind of a roly-poly, bigger guy. Wears a black Lacoste shirt. That's all he ever wears. Anyways, he walks through the doors, and me and Matt both jump at him, give him a big hug. He's like, what is going on, guys? Because we're just so
This
happy.
is how you do it in Canada.
Yeah, exactly. We're just like, you guys are really nice, because we're just so happy to see him. And so, no, it was like I said, for him, it was his first time in Canada, and we still hit him up the odd time on Instagram and check in on him. So, being able to get people to travel throughout the world and then experience our culture here, eat our food and see what it's like and what our environment is. That's also rewarding too, as seeing other people have a good time.
So we've talked about talent, we've talked about equipment. One thing we haven't talked about, which I actually didn't have in my notes, but I just thought about now because I am a videographer, and you guys deal with a lot of videographers and photographers, and I know sometimes that relationship can be a little stained, right? And a lot of it's because of communications, but you also rely on them to be able to market your products. What advice could you give to someone that's going to start, involving the quote unquote media into events?
Make sure they're getting pictures of the audience. I think that was one of the biggest things, because I'd always have photographers getting all these shots of the artist, which is great. Like, it's obviously a big part of it. But if you don't have that audience pic afterwards to be like, this is how many people we brought out. Like,
how
I
they
remember,
reacted.
yeah, I remember USS for part of their live show, we had them in vinyl, and they literally brought the entire audience out into the street, and they shut the street down because there was just 300 people out in the street. You got to have a photographer or somebody capturing those moments and things like that. And those typical moments of the artist on stage giving put your hands up and having that photographer back there. I think the communication of what you want to get across is important for that, because we would get all these pictures that were great photos of the artist, but there's no evidence that there was anyone watching that show. And that's a big thing, is that you want to have those images to recapture and to relive, so that people can be like, oh, there's me in that picture, like right there, sort of thing. So I think that's one of the biggest things is being aware that the show is great, but the audience and the whole experience is also just as important.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there anything in the language of deliverables? Because I know that sometimes can be a back and forth affair, this is what you told me, but this is what you're asking for now, and this is how much you paid me.
I think like in terms of
I'm only saying this as a videographer because I've had that conversation before too.
The miscommunication definitely comes from all sides, like from the promoter to the venue to everything. It's like you as a videographer and photographer, it's the hardest thing. You have to be able to tell a story and yet stay on brand. You know what I'm saying? It's like I say as an artist, it's like the artist flair is why you're there. It's like, of what you've done. But it's not the you show. It's like your artist flair is why we watch you there, but it's also about as Nick was saying, it's about telling the story of the night. And even especially with videos, we only have 1 minute videos now. It's like you have to get so much packed into that video, and it has to be smooth, it has to be everything. And so the miscommunication is definitely from that. And also not throwing any videographers under the bus, but get it done. I don't need it 3 weeks later. It's a waste of my time at that
But
point.
I think the language is really important, right? To say hey, people would think it's so simple to think that I would want this video in a week.
Yeah.
But because a videographer photographer has a lot on plate, I know from experience, if I'm not told, then I'm just gonna think that I have leeway in terms of when it is delivered.
Trust me,
this is really awkward.
Trust me, because
I'm trying to defend, but I also understand that's something that I try to focus on as well.
Yeah,
right?
and from my standpoint, it's I'm not unrealistic about the deadline. It's I know what it's I know how long it takes for you to plug in your camera and upload all those files. They're massive files. And then to cut through it and all that, it's a ton of work. But the reason why you're doing the work is because I don't want to do it. So get it done, and just get it done fast and efficiently, and cool. I mean, it's a job. it's a job.
I think having the vision conversation is very important before the event. Walk through with the videographer the venue, what your idea of good shots are, and he might say, no, that's not going to work, or yeah, we can do that. For example, be behind the DJ when you're doing your opening song, so you can see everybody as well with the DJ. And then also giving them a bit of creative free range. We worked with a guy for a lot of our videos, and he said, let's switch it up this time. Let's do your night or your team's night from start to finish. So you coming from your condo, to the venue, what you do throughout the day, what the team does, doing a pre-drink, bringing a group to the venue, incorporating that with the DJ, meeting the DJ's meeting people, showing a bit of the background life of a DJ and how they come from their hotel to having dinner, to getting to stage, to conversing with the opening DJs, not to play their tracks. So having that conversation though, and they're also the creative people, right? They're the guys behind the camera. So if they're not creative and doing something new, then I mean you got to look at a different team as well too. So we were blessed to work with great videographers. We still look back at those videos. We have kind of our late nights reunion still, and we'll bring up some of the best clips and things like that. And we still get the hairs on our skin still rise because we're just like, holy crap, man, how do we pull that off? Or how do we do that? Or remember that night when that happened? So the videos, I mean, that's all you've got to kind of live through, right? So
yeah, I think that it goes back to your point before of, how building your team and the creative things of your team, which keeps you hyped it keeps you going for events. It isn't like, we've talked about everything from social media to building our teams and all that. It's like a lot of that stuff, new music, that comes from your team, which is why you want your people to be able to be creative and have the creative freedom. And like all you're kind of doing is just steering them in a good direction. But like that's why the video stuff and everything. It's like that's why you're doing it, because you're the creative person and you're staying on top of it. And we're trusting you guys in that whole thing. So yeah.
So let's talk about the now. We're obviously in very unique times with COVID, and this really changes how you guys are approaching your job on a day-to-day basis right now and trying to get creative. During this, I don't even know how many months it has been, because 2020 just feels like such a blur, but at what point during this time were you like, I really need to pivot? I want to continue doing this, but I just have to get really creative in my ways. Blay, I know that you've now, kind of flipped how you run events over there at Onyx. When did those conversations start to begin?
I didn't really have a conversation. Yeah, I don't do so. But really when COVID hit, I have a really weird view of COVID. Like I think although it's a very bad thing, obviously, and like hearts go out to everybody, but it was almost to me. It was kind of the thing that I'm kind of, they call me a business hippie, as in like it was almost like a blessing in some weird way. I don't not that it's a sickness is a blessing, but I think like our whole society, everything was moving way too fast, right? Mm-hmm. I think with the COVID thing, and it made us be able to step back, and also it did like kind of level the playing field for everybody in terms of like you don't have this massive budget to like work with to get whatever you want.
So you feel like it like reset the field.
Reset the field. That's what I think. So for me, it's like in terms of bringing in the production stuff and doing Onyx that way, it was like online's already a thing, and now it's like instead of just relying on booze sales and like pushing through alcohol sales, now we can get back to the basics of like how can the artist support this, and we can like support the artists and build that type of stuff up. So how can we showcase artists and make it a cool way that like if we can only have 50 people in the room, that they're entertained while just sitting there. Like it pretty much took out the whole thing of what a nightclub is. It's like, yeah, come to a nightclub, you can't dance and you can't talk to chicks. It's like, sweet. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, it's impossible. So I had to we had to pivot and make stuff like, so I was honestly instantly thinking of different ideas of what we can do, and because we're weird and niche and stuff like that, linking back up with Nick and getting a team back together and like, being able to be like, okay, we can offer a nightclub feel and still have people interacting and stuff, but while being socially distanced and not breaking any of the COVID rules and stuff like that. And that, like, being online and be able to do that, like, technology is awesome right now.
So explain exactly what you're doing right now.
How did I put it? Community-based entertainment. So what we're doing is, like, we still have our DJ nights and stuff like that, but instantly you know that DJ nights aren't going to sell as much because you don't have the level of partying that's going on. I don't have all these people rotating, doing shots and stuff like that. Now I have people sitting down. So we're making it more interactive. Like last night we had a show that we called Drip or Drown. And it's like up and coming artists, hip hop artists and stuff. Like they come and there's two artists and you get to critique their music, everything from their lyrics to their beats to their style and their vibe. And you're doing that live with the 50 people in the room. And then therefore it's like with hip hop and it's attitude, you know, there's smack talking and there's stuff like that. So it's like the booths are talking and critiquing these two brave souls that are sitting up there being like, this is my music. It's like, your music sucks, dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? But like, luckily we haven't had that yet. But
You've like turned into American Idol, basically.
yeah, pretty much, where it's like, you know, and then we have intermissions where our DJs are still playing and stuff like that.
And
So
people can tune in online as well, right? Not just the 50 people that are in the venue.
Yeah, which
exactly.
creates the whole community vibe, right? So it's like, if you go to onyxnightclubguelph.com, plug.
We're gonna get to the end. Don't worry.
I'll still plug. But you go there, right? And yeah, you can watch online and stuff. And honestly, with even Facebook shutting down the music thing, it was a blessing. Like it got too messy on Facebook. So they're like, we don't want music, and it's like, awesome. So now we can drive everybody to one site, which makes everything more credible and. Like, I don't know what to say. It's like we're doing some weird stuff, but it's cool stuff.
But if there's any time to experiment, it's right now, right?
Yeah, and it kind of came about in almost like accidentally. I mean, for me, I was saying before too that I was approaching, like we were approaching year 10 for the festival in 2020. And it was normally in March, but we were already kind of talking about switching that, maybe making it a summer festival, putting it outside, doing something different for year 10 to kind of set aside the festival and all that. And then obviously with COVID coming, it was just completely put on hold. But I was already kind of thinking like, well, what is the next thing? And I think for a lot of people, 2020 felt like it was going to be a big year, or I heard so many bands saying we're going to release this album or tour or do whatever. It's going to be this big year, but I really had nothing planned in a way. And it was weird for me to have that, because it's not like I didn't want to still do stuff, but I didn't know what to do with it. Like the festival is great. We support Lakeside Hope House with their annual event, which raises money for their community breakfast programs and things like that. So we were still involved with events, but there was nothing specifically going on because we didn't have, district anymore, and we didn't have a venue sort of thing. So it was kind of in a weird way, like Blaise said, like this blessing in disguise, where it finally gave me an opportunity to actually have a break, because I don't vacation, I don't go away. I've never had a vacation in my life. Like this is my life is
a regular year to you.
Yeah, this is this is what I do all the time, right? Like people always tell me, oh, you got to take a break, you got to do this, and I understand that, but you don't really process it, because when you're on the go, you're always trying to think of like, what's the next event, what act can I book, how is this gonna keep the bar busy or keep our staff occupied and entertained and things like that, because you're really trying to entertain people all the time almost. So in a way, it was a very real step back, and I finally got to just do nothing for a little while. And then I feel kind of independently, both Blaise and I kind of came to this idea that there still had to be connections with artists. And I started this little Facebook page called Stay Home Fest. And the idea was that there's just a bunch of artists as admins on it, and they can share their stuff so that there was one channel to go through. So they could all be sharing their things to that one page, as well as their own pages, but trying to create different avenues. But even in pursuing that, like Facebook's a really messy thing sometimes. So it didn't really pan out, but it was still a way to kind of connect artists and musicians. And then at that same time, Blaise had come up and designed the whole sound stage and done all that with sound events, and was kind of just like, hey, we got the space, so let's like try and do something if we can, sort of thing. And that's kind of how I think like our relationship and working relationship has always worked, where it's like we're almost of the same mind in a way, where it's just like he comes up with the technical end, and then we both come up with ideas to how to implement it or how to make it work, sort of thing. So it was very much like an accidental, because I was not like on my way out or whatever, but I was kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore, like
everybody thought that.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah. It's like, yeah, for our industry especially, like it was a scary thing. Like the artist industry, it goes so deep, you know what I'm saying? It's not just about the bars or the live shows, but it's about, the photographers, the videographers, even, the people who cater and do stuff like that, or just like, case pushers, mixers. Like there's a lot of people that it affected, and, it's like, it was really scary. It still is a scary time. We're like, we are lucky that we live in a place like Guelph, where it's that small community, but it's like small town feel, big community, where it's like we can really target what we're doing and still stay like, afloat by just targeting our little city or our tri-city.
Or your niches.
Yeah, our niches. It's like if I was in Toronto, like, you know, or the bigger cities, like, yeah, I understand why everybody is very, very worried right now. It's like we're just really lucky of our little town Guelph.
Our own little bubble over here, right?
Our little bubble.
Mitch, I want to ask you a question. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't. I mean, you're doing more things from Toronto, right? Remotely, like you don't have your hands as dirty as they normally would with organizing of the nightlife, right? So, I mean, during a time like this in COVID, it'd probably be an easy opportunity to transition into something new. Like, what keeps you wanting to be in the game?
I actually got out of the game like 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
I did have my hand in a little bit of things here and there. We still kind of did 12 bars. I mean, we let some of the younger guys run with late nights for a bit in Guelph. I'm in finance now. So to see the last year with COVID and how people are adapting, I mean, my heart goes out to them because it's a definitely big change. But I think the creativity then kind of reinvigorates from people that, you know, maybe they're too comfortable. They had the same event that they did every single night. So this allows them, like Billy said, to reset, to regroup, and come up with new and strategic ideas to, I mean, keep them afloat, put money in their pockets, and still have their clientele have a good time. And it's very important these days, and especially from the music standpoint. Music gets people out of bed sometimes. They put a smile on their face. And without that and without people doing these online events, life becomes stale sometimes. So being able to adapt and to continue to push the boundaries, I think it'll make, you know, everyone stronger coming out of this, because, you know, once things go back to normal, and they will be going back to normal at some point, you can also leverage now all the new things that they've come up with.
Exactly.
So I mean, hats off to these guys and you know, people that are in the restaurant business or in the service business that are, you know, still plugging away. I mean, stick-to-itiveness is extremely important, and I've lived by that since I was a young kid. You just got to keep going, because, I mean, many times you probably could have said, you know what, I'm going to lock this up and get on to something else. But to continue to truck on through shows, I mean, the type of people that these guys are on stage, and people that all over the world that are still doing it.
I'm glad you did bring up the fact that you stopped 5 years ago, because there's always this separation anxiety of trying to get out of this promotion world, right? Because we're so used to it. It's a creature of habit, and it's, you know, it makes you feel young, right? You're still talking to young people, all that sort of stuff.
You can take my job anytime, man.
Yeah. So you're trying to get out. So maybe this advice will be helpful, because, like, I know a DJ that had, I mean, we both know this DJ, JT Audio, right? He was killing the game, but at some point he didn't love it as much as he used to, and he knew he had to move on in his life. For you, I mean, what was that conversation like with yourself internally, and how were you able to come to grasp that, like, you need to move on and pursue finance?
It was really hard. I mean, like we said, I was doing it for more than 10 years. And I loved what I did. My job was to wake up in the morning, find new artists, listen to music, come up with new creative ideas. And I got to see people have a good time. It made me happy to see a crowd of 1,000 people enjoying themselves. And I got to do that day in and day out. So it was hard for me to exit because of those reasons. I mean, the money was good. The people I met were good. The network was great. But I mean, we were doing 3-4 events a week. And I mean, kudos to these guys for still doing it, but it was...
I was going to also say, events that you're doing late into the night,
that's
right?
That's the thing. So we always had the joke, we work 9 to 5. We work 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. And to do that back to back to back, at 21, 22, no problem. I'll do that all day long.
All day.
I got into my late 20s, and I'm like, holy, I got like, now I got one night in me, and I had to take 2-3 days to recover. So I mean, it is a young man's game, or it can be, if you've got a good team with you, you can continue that on. I got out of the game, though, of booking DJs because it became a different landscape. It became a lot to do more with money and not for the DJs. I mean, the big guys kind of took over, like the Live Nations took over, the big agencies took over, and the price tag that they wanted for DJs was absurd, especially in a town like Guelph.
Yeah, it's completely unrealistic.
They're charging Toronto prices in a town like Guelph. And then what really changed it is the festivals. So you had what's the one? Vald Music Festival. You got Digital Dreams in Toronto. They're paying DJs $40,000-$50,000 for a 2-hour set. So we'll give you an example. We had Nicky Romero come for the first time in Canada. He played at Cobra at downtown Toronto for about $5,000. Great show, amazing show. We were going to have him back the next year because we have first right of refusal. Problem is Inc. offered them $50,000 to play at Veld. So they said, can you match this? I'm like, buddy, I've got a 400-person venue in Toronto, 500-person venue. Yeah. We're charging $10 at the door. It's not feasible. So it came to the point where, you've got to kind of understand that the landscape is changing. And then at the time, there were so many DJs too that even finding an up-and-coming DJ, nobody wanted to see that. They wanted to see the Aviciis. They want to see the big ones. So we're either having to charge $50 to $100 for a ticket, which for a university student is not going to happen. So we kind of had to adapt and kind of change the landscape and go back to different types of events.
I think that's where the internet's like a blessing and a curse, because when you were bringing in this talent, like a lot of people didn't know who they were, what their music was like, where a lot of people now can go sample that artist and be like, that's not kind of my jam, and that's not why I'm going to come in. And I think you're kind of seeing how it's affected us, because you were able to bring all those talented people in when they were early, but now we're getting the likes of, the Nellies and the Snoops who are not as big anymore, but they're much more affordable, right? And a lot of these younger artists now that are getting big, they know their worth, right? So they're gonna hike up their price a little more because they know in 4 or 5 months time I'm gonna become at this tier, right?
Yeah, and the time frame for a lot of artists is so short right now. Like that could be their only chance to get that, because it's such a saturated market at times too. So there is that factor where I almost wonder, it's like, well, I can get this now, so I'm going to try and get it if I can.
Absolutely.
I think let's just say, or what I want to go off of is like, staying in the game too. It's true. You start to slow down and stuff like that. It's
You
about
just asked me to get out.
Yeah, exactly. But it's about finding people who can take over for you. As you said, you had your guys doing bunny hop stuff, and I just get an email from Mitch once a year. It's like bunny hop. That's pretty much all it said. I was like,
let's go, baby.
Yeah,
Even checking how you're doing, eh?
Right, the business. He knew that those bar sales were coming in at 6 p.m. So he's like, let's go. I love this day.
6 p.m. I could get home by midnight. This is awesome. But yeah, it's about trusting people, stay humble, and letting people take over. I organize. I'm out a lot less now, but I'll still go out just to show the young bucks I can still do it. It's about and then also life. The older you get, you try having a wife or something where you're like, I'll be home at 4 a.m. She's gonna be like, yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? Your priorities start to change, and it's okay to still have the late nights and stuff, but it's like when your priorities are changing, you have to adapt and put your crew in charge and kind of go a little hands off. I don't get some of the new music, mumble rap and stuff. Don't understand it, but hey, it's
sad rap or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Sad boy music.
Mumble rap. All right, so you guys have provided a lot of great advice. Obviously, team building and being persistent and having thick skin. You've given so many great tidbits. I kind of want to end this on the similar note. If you could provide one thing, a piece of advice to anyone that wants to get in events and getting into that sort of game, what would you say?
My biggest thing is always being humble about what you know and what you don't, and being able to take criticism, because I think one of the hardest things is when somebody says no to a good idea that you have. It's not always a no. There can be kind of well, that's not necessarily feasible, and you just have to adjust and pivot, like you said. And that's hard. It can be hard to eat it sometimes. I've been told numerous times that to swallow your pride and whatever else, and it's hard. When it comes to those points when you do have to make those decisions, I think that's one of the hardest things, is being self-aware and being humble about the situation. I'd say has been the biggest things for me, at least.
Blake?
Yes, it's just
everything you said.
It's stay humble and always be open to learning and understand that even if to me, one thing I always say to myself is a failure is not necessarily a failure. It's just another way to learn. So if you have all these grand plans and it doesn't work out, it's the whole industry is if you want to be in the industry, you want to be serious, it's you can't quit. Don't quit over just something bad happening or during a massive event and nobody shows up. Don't. It happens. Maybe you should have had somebody to say no to you. I don't know, but definitely stay humble and keep yourself up, because in our industry, it's really hard to, stay positive and stay humble, especially when you're just, you wear everything kind of on your sleeve. When somebody doesn't have a good night and they're yelling at you, it's like, it's okay. Tomorrow's another day. So yeah, stay humble. And
You got your wife to yell at you for that, right?
Oh, I'm not married. I got a club, man.
You're married to the game. You're married to the game. I gotcha. Mitch.
I'd have to say stick-to-itiveness. Stick to it no matter what. If you believe, if you believe it will come. We had nights when we started out Taboo, for example. 5 of my team members, we were the only people in that club, and might have been for months. Every Thursday for months, we'd throw electronic music parties. No one would come, and we're like, should we shut this down? We kind of regrouped and said, what can we do different? Brought in $2 Jaeger bombs, brought in different DJs, and built the night. And when we had that foundation, again, the amount of reward came from that. When you look around the room and you remember those nights where no one coming to your venue and you're like, we got to get, what are we doing? We got to get out of this. But I mean, some of the guys, they stuck with it and they believed that, there was something here. So just stick to it with your gut. There's going to be a lot of no's, a lot of doors shut in your face. But, some of those doors that will open, you'll see the light and you're like, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I love what I do.
Right. So there's a level of stubbornness, I guess, involved with it as well.
Oh, definitely.
Just knowing that you can do this, and at some point you're going to get there, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, this has been such a great conversation. A lot to take home and learn as well. Is there anything that we'd like to plug? I know, Belay, you just plugged earlier. Would you like to plug again? Just put him on the spot.
I don't know. Onyx Nightclub or onyxnightclubguelph.com. If you want to see some live streams, and we're right downtown Guelph above Frankenstein's there. I guess. Shout out to my partners, my friends, and I'm humbled to be on a panel with these guys for sure. It's an awesome thing. The organizers of this event for sure.
Ammo Music, Eddie.
I don't know if I have any specific shout-outs, but I always thank my mom on these things. So, but yeah, I think if anyone wants to reach out to us, the Onyx website, Gain Media, you can find us there on our socials, email, that sort of stuff. So we're always doing lots and up for doing pretty much anything. So yeah, hit us up.
Mitch, yourself?
I got to shout out a couple people here. Matt Duran, co-founder of Late Nights. He kind of pushed the boundaries. He was the creative one, and he was one that believed that we could do it. Some days I'm like, why are we doing this? Let's pack it in, and he kept going. So shout out to him. Matt Glover, I'm a production lighting guy. He stuck with us as well too. He also introduced me to Michael Woods' music, which kind of sparked the love for electronic music. So he was a big factor. And then, the Late Nights guys, Ryan, Mateo, Kevin, Jerome, who am I forgetting? Oh yeah, Ben Cohen, shout out Ben. Those guys and Jerome, those guys kind of, came together as a group and persevered through times where they could have gone to any other, event or what they wanted to do. They stuck with me. So, your teamwork is one of the main things. I am in finance now as a financial advisor at RBC, so anybody needs finance needs, hit me up.
I love it.
I learned a lot from budgeting from the events and stuff, so if anybody wants to make some money and get some investments going,
I'm coming to you, man.
That's great. All right, so this has been Live Music, Bookings, and Nightlife, then and now, the Royal City Summit. Again, I want to thank our panel for being here today. This has been really, really a great day. Learned a lot, and hopefully you've learned a lot as well. Again, I'm Dee, on behalf of Ammo Music and putting this incredible production together. Thanks to our videography team, and of course Eddie for putting this all together. It's been a fun 15-year journey. We were able to cram that in about an hour or so. But gentlemen, thanks once again. And
Thank you.
It's been such a joy. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Ciao.